console app with host, console app without host, console app with host plus I-hosted services. So these three categories I explain. Without host lifespan, just execution of the DLL. With host lifespan is which type it is, only hosting hosted services, then we said as it is a worker services. It is hosting services with the handling the HTTP request, we can say that it is as a web server. So just we take console app. This is my console. It didn't contain any DLL. So I am converting this console into worker services or web host services. How? First, console is just executing the whatever files DLL we are using in main class. Now we are first we need to convert this console into worker services. First we have to install hosting object. We have to call console, we'll call host object. To call this host object, first it need to install the hosting method classes, which is present in Microsoft hosting. These hosting contain host object and host builder object. Next, I said that host object whose lifespan is throughout the application, it internally encapsulated three things. One is configuration, next is logger, next is service container. So for the configuration we have packages, Microsoft extension, configuration, abstraction. This is the DLL which contain abstraction related to configuration. Now after that, host object encapsulated. After configuration, it encapsulated logging. So to encapsulate logging, first it is encapsulating abstraction. After that, what are the implementation host object using? By default it is using JSON configuration, XML configuration, and app setting and settings configuration, and secret configuration. These four configuration: JSON, XML, settings, secret. So from where it is extracting? Microsoft extension configuration JSON, Microsoft extension configuration settings, like XML. Like this, these are the implementation of the abstraction of the configuration. In the same manner, it encapsulated loggers. For logger also, Microsoft extension logger abstraction classes. Abstraction logger contain the what are the interfaces which is needed, which is used by the host object. And runtime logger, we have logger providers, will explain laterly, related to the logger services, explicitly related to the logger services. And this interface, Microsoft extension and configuration, related to configuration, I will explain explicitly related to this topic. Now after that, fourth point I need to set related to host is the host. We said host is the host having lifetime. It is not a console application just running the services, and after running the DLL any library, then after running it will be closed. But host is not like that. Explicitly someone have to stop. So who is starting? We are starting that services, and explicitly someone have to stop that services. During starting and stopping, middle is running. These are the three states of this host. One is starting, next is running, next is stopping. So starting the service, host starting the service, that means it is calling all the I hosted services. After calling the I hosted services, then only host object will come to the state of running. Otherwise it is in starting state. Okay, in starting state it is calling all I hosted services. What method? Start async method. After calling, it is getting back to the host object, then it came to the running state. Then finally, by explicitly anyone closing the application, then it came as a stopping. Okay, so starting, stopping, main in the running. If I hosted is it hosted object internally encapsulated Kestrel, then during running phase it is handling the requests, handling request, whereas I host this host object encapsulate hosted service. During running phase it is just holding until it is just running, means it is its lifespan is the dependent on this hosted service lifespan. Any hosted service killed, then host object also killed. Or background service, we have multiple responsibilities like handling large file watching and scheduling. We'll discuss later. So briefly I say that lifespan is starting the host object. Starting the host object means it is just calling the all hosted services quickly and return back the control flow. Whenever the host object it back the control flow, then I can say it is in a running phase. In running phase itself, running phase means in task manager you see that the task is the whoever hosting the host object is either as a Windows services or IIS services. We see in task manager that it is in running, where explicitly we are closing stopping the service, then stop is happening. This is the fourth point I cover related to the host object. Finally, configuration related to the host object. Host configuration. Before that, we have two types you need to remember. This is the heart of the host. We have two types of configuration. One is runtime configuration, one is compile time. Actually, configuration is nothing but settings we are giving to the application. Application will behave differently based on the settings which are giving to the application. So to that settings we are saying that configuration. Some configurations are compile time configurations, some configurations are running time configuration. Compile time configuration will handle before creation of the DLL. Runtime, after the DLL it is running, it will extract from some app settings that are the runtime configuration. Okay, so how host object it is configuring compile time, that's the main. Compile time, for compile time configuration, whatever needed to the host object is first which type of configuration it is using. Actually, host object is internally uses mostly three things. One is a container, next is a set, next is a configuration, next is logger. Other than this, what it is, where we need to host, where we need to dump, these are the only things host object is doing. So these things who is configuring, we have to configure from the compile time. So configuration compile time is logger, which logger we are using, what are the logger services providers we are using. These are the configuration which JSON, which config, which which from which file we have to need to read setting, I configuration, XML configuration, JSON configuration. These are the, and next is containers, which container, built-in container we need to use or from external we have to use. These are the configuration we are doing to the compile time to the host object. So host object will not created until these things will be known by the host object. So we have host object will give the host builder object. Okay, host builder object will take responsibility. Host builder, we have builder patterns in ASP.NET Core. At multiple places we use the builder pattern. The main purpose of builder pattern is whenever we need to create one object which we need, but we don't know exactly what are the things it needed. So we give the end user to select the options, you need this, you need this. After selecting, we are creating the object. At the time we are using the builder pattern, so like wherever configuration needed. So now host builder act as a builder pattern which for whom it is builder to host object. Host builder will take the configuration, and during build method it is creating the host object. What configuration it is taking? Mostly those are logging, container, and configuring, means here is file configuring. These are the things host builder take the responsibility. But here some tricky things are, if our host object internally encapsulated Kestrel for handling the HTTP request, then we have different other types of configuration, like what are the middlewares we need to use. These are the different things. That's why host object use the behavior for different classes. Internally it uses different classes and given the different methods for our user point of view to which any methods is for this responsibility. One method is for different one responsibility, like we have program.cs class mostly responsible for host related configuration. If host is internally used for web host, we have to use other configuration related to middlewares. That's why it given the configure app method which is present in startup class. Host builder use the startup class configure app method for configuring the Kestrel related request handling services. Okay, these are the things I will explain explicit means elaborately whenever I came to the topic related to what is the startup class, what is the program that class, what are the methods in startup class, for what purpose this method, where and why, what configuration we are doing in each method. I will explain. Okay, thanks.